Welcome back to the John Trading channel. Bitcoin right now is at this major support level and it looks like it wants to make that major break to the upside that I've been talking about. Plus, Ethereum looks even more bullish than Bitcoin. You can see we're finally getting that break above the trading range, and as I've been speaking about for the last week, we finally had that positive MACD histogram tick. There's also a lot of crypto news that I want to go through with you today, so make sure you stay tuned until the end of the video. If you haven't already, leave a like on the video, make sure you're subscribed and leave a comment if you're enjoying these daily crypto videos. Today is Bitcoin Pizza Day. Meet Jeremy, the man who received 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 pizzas back in 2010. I got a pizza for contributing to an open source project. It's great that I got to be part of the early history in Bitcoin. Those 10,000 Bitcoins that he originally got is now worth over $250 million. Back in the day, he got that 10,000 Bitcoin for only 2 pizzas. Now you can buy 10,000 pizzas with only 1 Bitcoin. Next, how could you be bearish on Bitcoin when the 2-week RSI has bottomed out on its channel that spans the entirety of the Bitcoin price data? Comparing relative previous points, this cycle is just beginning. Will you still be here when Bitcoin hits the channel top? Because it's coming. You can see here on the 2-week RSI, every time we come to this really low level, back in 2012, back in 2015, back in 2019, and look, it just happened in early 2023. It's showing that these are some of the best buying opportunities for Bitcoin before we then come back and retest the top of the 2-week RSI channel. Let's also look at this chart. For my theory on a parabolic move in the short-term time frame, a major impulse is called for this week. How this parabola was used for this last major bull run. If you then extend it out and put it on the price of today, you can see how it's perfectly reacting, getting a really strong bottom from here to a really strong upside push, potentially pushing us to $130,000 per Bitcoin in 2024. Lastly, US bank deposits are down 5.6% from their peak last year, the largest drawdown we've seen since the 1970s. You can see in these shaded areas where we have the recession, we also got that massive drawdown on bank deposits back in 1975. Right now, in 2023, we're seeing the biggest drawdown in banks possible. Potentially, a lot of people are taking their money out of banks and storing it in crypto. Before I get into the price, make sure you've liked the video, make sure you're subscribed, and leave a comment if you're enjoying these daily crypto videos. Today's an extremely exciting day for Bitcoin and Ethereum, as it looks like we might get that break above the trading range. Ethereum looks even more bullish, but we'll get to that in just a moment. As I've been talking about, we had this major support in this area. We did have this spike down on the end of the 60-day Bitcoin cycle, but we never closed below this support area, showing that it is bullish. If it was bearish, we would get a close of the bar down in this area, but that was not what we had. Here is what I like to call the value zone in between the medium term and short term EMA. Every time we've come up into these prices, we've had a small amount of sell-offs, but it looks like now we're finally going to get that break above. We're having continuous days of MACD upticks. Ethereum has already broken above the zero line and we're already in the green, and it looks like Bitcoin is just slightly lagging behind. As I've been speaking about, the end of this 60-day Bitcoin cycle was right-hand translated, which gives us the high probability play that the next cycle of the 60-day cycle, which has already been going on for about 9 days, is going to be right-hand translated, also meaning that we have that high probability to move to the upside. So in trading, you always just want to be trading the probabilities. There is never a 100% probability that price is either going here or there. We need to just play the probabilities as it is, probably a 60-40 bet right now, and that's what we need to play. We need to have a positive expectancy system where we have a positive risk to reward and a good probability on the trade, which will lead to positive expectancy on every single trade. I know people that have a 30 to 40% win rate in the market, but they make thousands of dollars every single week because their trading system has a positive expectancy. They have a really good risk to reward, although the probability isn't there, which when you actually calculate that out in the trader's equation, you'll find that they have a positive expectancy system that they can use day in and day out in the markets. Looking at Bitcoin on the 4-hourly chart, back through this area a couple of weeks ago, we had that downward sloping EMA, which shows us that there's a higher probability of making shorts to the downside. But what's happened for the last week? Slightly up, slightly down, slightly up, slightly down. We're in a sideways trading range action right now. A few weeks ago on Bitcoin, you can see we had this downward sloping EMA, which shows that there's a high probability of actually making shorts to the downside in this area. But what's happened for the last week? we've been slightly up and slightly down. The EMA has been basically sideways, which shows that we're in that trading range price action. People are buying low, they're selling high, and they're scalping. That's what you need to do every time you enter a trading range. You can't just buy in these areas and hope for a really strong push to the upside, because this EMA is not signaling that. It's signaling that we are in that sideways trading range action. You can also see that we're in actually a form of a symmetrical triangle. We can actually bring these through, and you can see how price is basically converging. We're getting these lower highs, and we're also getting these higher lows every time. And I'm always teaching that once we get to this last third of the triangle, that's when we get the apex breakout, because we're at the apex of the triangle right now. This area, or the last third of the triangle, is known as the apex of the triangle. That's where we're at right now. So that's where we can see that there is a high probability of breaking out of the triangle. When we're back in these areas, we're not near the apex of the triangle, and there's a much lower probability of having that upside breakout. But we are in that apex of the triangle, which shows that we're either going to get a really strong downturn or a really strong upturn, depending on how the market wants to play. And I'll be following it and trading it either way. But as I said, there is that high probability of actually moving to the upside based on the 60-day Bitcoin cycle, also based on the weekly time frame for Bitcoin. And there are multiple factors. So you have confluence in this area right now saying the probability is a little bit higher that we're going to the upside than the downside. But it doesn't matter. If we have that downside break, I'm going to trade it exactly the same. If you can see in here, we're in that trading range price action. Every time we come to this top side of the trading range, we're getting sellers. Every time we come to this bottom side of the trading range, we're getting buyers. So people are buying low and they're selling high. They're selling high and then they're buying low. They're buying low and then they're selling high. And that is the perfect trading range price action that we're getting. But if we are to get that massive upside movement, what I am expecting is initially this is resistance, resistance, resistance. We get a really strong breakthrough resistance. What happens when we flip resistance? It will then come back as support. Price will come back, retest this area before we get that massive rocket to the upside. So make sure you're watching my videos, as I'll release exactly when this happens. Now coming over to Ethereum, we're actually finally getting this break above the trading range on Ethereum. It hasn't quite happened yet on Bitcoin, and it looks like Ethereum is actually leading the way right now. Initially back here, we had this resistance, resistance, resistance area. What happens when resistance gets broken through? You get a breakup, and it then acts as a support level before you then rocket to the upside. And you can see supporting, supporting, supporting. We did get that small breakdown on the wick, but only a wick. Only if it closed down on its low, that would be a bearish sign. But since we closed back in this support area, it's looking extremely bullish. Plus, we're finally getting a break above this value zone. As I say, right in between these areas is the value zone. People that bought down here are actually getting out because they're understanding that potentially we're still in that trading range price action, and they're not quite expecting to get that major breakout. You can see 1 sell, 2 sell, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Every single time we come back into the value zone, there was a short amount of buyers, but you can see right now we're finally getting that break above. Looks like we're hopefully closing above. Plus, you can see we finally got this positive break on the MACD histogram. For over 8 days, we were trending to the upside, which shows that the volume of buyers and sellers has actually been increased on the buying side, as this MACD histogram is using momentum to actually calculate each and every bar. So it would be saying right now that there is more buying momentum over the last 8 to 9 days than there has been selling momentum. If there was more selling momentum, you would have seen it in these red histogram bars, because it would show that more volume of sellers is coming in than buyers. But we finally ticked to the upside, which is now signaling that this could finally be the upside breakout that we've been waiting for. Here on the 4-hour time frame, we haven't quite got that break above the trading range level. As I've been speaking about, people are buying low, and buying low in this area. People are then selling high, selling high, selling high, all in these areas. We're even getting what we need right here is we need a much higher amount of buyers than we do sellers to finally get that break above this trading range. So what we're looking for initially, this has acted as a resistance level. What we want is get a break up in this area, then price to come back, retest that initial resistance level. It will then act as a support level because it got flipped, and then we'll finally get that massive rocket to the upside. And I think we're either going to get that today or tomorrow. And that's why I'm heavily watching the charts today, because I'm waiting for that confirmation to get a solid breakdown. Price will then retest this area and you'll get that really strong break to the upside. So make sure you're watching each and every video, as I'll release exactly when it happens. It's not as prominent as Bitcoin, but we've slightly been in this symmetrical triangle, and you can see, where do we finally get the breakout? We've got the first third of the triangle. We then have the second third of the triangle. We're finally getting it in the last third of the triangle, because this exactly is where the apex is. And right where those two lines meet is the highest probability to finally get that breakout. That's why I'm watching it right now. We did have a little bit of resistance, but finally a massive amount of buyers are coming in. And I do expect this candle to close in 2 hours and have that really solid positive uptick. Then we'll get a follow-up candle, another follow-up candle. We'll come back, retest this area, and then have that massive rocket to the upside. I really hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you haven't already, leave a like on the video, make sure you're subscribed, and leave a comment if you're enjoying these daily crypto videos. I'll see you in tomorrow's video. Plus, if you want super up-to-date information, make sure you follow my Twitter, as I'll be tweeting out as soon as I'm ready to get back into Bitcoin and Ethereum.